This is the complete review of the new Alcatel One Touch Fierce 2 under Metro PCS. The first things we're going to look at today for this particular part of the review is the design, build quality, and also the display. Now on the back, you're going to see up top here is a 5 megapixel camera, the speakerphone for video capturing, LED flash, the Alcatel One Touch logo, and the rear firing speakers. On the left side here, you're going to find the volume up and down rocker, as well as the power button. Bottom, the micro USB port for charging and data syncing, and a microphone for voice calls. Nothing on the side. Left side. Up top, a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And the front here, you have, of course, your 5-inch display, a 960 by 540 pixel resolution. That's a quarter HD or lowercase q HD display. Your VGA or 0.3 megapixel front-facing camera. Front firing speakers for voice. An LED notification light, actually. More on that in a little bit. And your proximity sensor as well as a light sensor, because this does have automatic brightness. On the bottom down here, you have your 3 hardware capacitive touch keys. The menu key, home key, and the back button key. Okay, now when we focus on the back of the phone here, you're going to see a lip right by the micro USB port. That's so you can remove the back cover. And let's go ahead and remove the back cover. Inside here, you're going to see the 2000 milliamp hour battery that's removable, unlike the previous Fierce model. This one, the battery, which had a battery that wasn't removable, this one is actually user removable. You have the SIM card slot up here, and right next to it, down here, is the slot for the micro SD card expansion, which you can expand up to 32 gigabytes. More on that a little bit later when we look at the interface and whatnot. And then you can see where the speaker fires from. Now, overall, about the build quality of the phone, despite its being built of plastic, it feels sturdy in the hand. Doesn't feel cheap. It's not the most elegant looking design. Definitely not quite as refined and polished looking as perhaps LG's L70, for example. But it has a curved design on the back, rounded corners, and a curved back that gives it a feel in the hand. So despite being a 5-inch display, especially if you're a user coming from a smaller screened Android device or iPhone, it may feel big at first, especially given the thickness at 9.9 millimeters, but I think you eventually get used to it and appreciate the extra screen real estate and the overall sturdiness of the build quality itself. One last thing about the handling of the device, in terms of its size of the Fierce 2, is comparing it to the L70. Another phone that's similar in its price range. A phone that's well-deserved and quite popular for Metro PCS users. And it's a good indication here of exactly the kind of size differences you're going to see with both phones. You'll notice that the Alcatel One Touch Fierce 2 is a little taller, noticeably taller, and noticeably wider as well. And a little thicker too. So if you're debating about upgrading from the L70 to possibly the One Touch Fierce, because Metro PCS has released a few new phones the past couple of months. You're definitely going to notice the size difference, especially if you haven't used a 5-inch screen device before. But I think, especially now in this age of 5.5-inch and bigger phones, you're definitely going to get used to the size and more than likely appreciate the higher res display as well as the more real estate when looking at apps, reading books, and also surfing the web. Now, as you can see here, as you'll see in a moment, the Fierce 2 does have an LED notification light. You'll see that it blinks white every about 5 to 7 seconds for, missed text messages, calls, and also app notifications. Now, this white LED also is an indicator of when it's charging. When you're charging it, it's going to be solid white instead of the blinking white, and then it disappears when the phone is fully charged. So that's a big plus, especially if you're coming from, let's say, the LG L70, for example, which a phone that I used for quite a few months. Excellent phone, but it was a shame that it didn't have an LED notification. So you actually had to unlock the screen to check if you had any missed calls or text messages or any other notifications. So that's a positive right there. Let's look at the display quality and the overall user interface of the Fierce 2. Now, when you press the power button to unlock the screen, you're going to see the lock screen here. You have 3 options, and the way that you would unlock it is you would press and hold on this little lock icon here, and you can swipe up to go into your text messages, to the left for phone calls, right for camera, and down to unlock the phone completely. Now, what's a little disappointing here about this lock screen is ever since Android 4.2 Jelly Bean, users have been able to add and install custom widgets to the lock screen, which unfortunately the One Touch Fierce does not do. So that's a little disappointing, but not necessarily a huge deal, really. Okay, let's go ahead and unlock the screen and look at the overall UI. Okay, let's go into settings here, and we'll go into About Phone, just as a demonstration. As you can see, Android version is 4.4.2 KitKat. You got the KitKat logo here, and the Easter egg as well, displaying all the previous Android versions now. Okay, let's go back. You have 5 home screens here that you can install apps and widgets. Unfortunately, though, you can't reduce the number of home screens. That remains static. Okay. Let's go back home, and you have your app drawer right here, all your different apps. Now, one thing about the One Touch UI is that it's a very lightly skinned version of Android KitKat, so a lot of the features are very similar to stock Android, but you do have customized icons and whatnot. But if you go down to the notification panel here, up top, much like stock Android, you have your quick launch icon right here to bring up all your quick settings. And if you swipe down from the top with 2 fingers, you automatically go into your quick settings. Very reminiscent of stock Android. So it's a light customization skin. You don't have a lot of extra unnecessary features that you might see in other skins like TouchWiz, for example. So that's pretty good. It also helps the fact that it's such a light skin that the overall UI feels far more fluid than you would a more heavily customized UI interface. Now, in regards to the overall screen quality, like I talked about a little earlier, QHD display, 960 by 4 or 540 pixel resolution which results in a pixel density of 220 pixels per inch. Now, despite that being a sub HD resolution, the picture quality, screen quality of the screen itself is still pretty sharp. Texts look sharp. Color reproduction is actually quite excellent, despite the fact that this is a TFT display, not IPS. And if we go to the web, well, let's check out GSM Arena. Definitely a great website if you want to get all the latest on smartphone news and whatnot. As you can see, the page loads pretty quickly. Let's go to the desktop version here, just to show you how the screen looks when you're using, compared to looking at a full page text. Now let's look at pinch to zoom. Pinch to zoom works quite well. Can zoom a little bit, look at that text a little better, give you an idea of how the quality of web browsing. Okay, we'll close that. Okay, let's take a look at an example of media here to demonstrate the screen quality.
This is from Steve in New Orleans, Louisiana. You ever been down to New Orleans there? You ever been down on the bayou? Is that what they call it, the bayou? Yeah, you been down on the bayou there, Jeff?
Oh, hell yeah. I go there at least once a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have a place down there?
I do. I've got a little pad down there.
So as you can see, display viewing angles are pretty good, and the color reproduction is quite good. And if you have HD movies, especially up to 1080p, which the Fierce 2 can play natively, they actually look quite nice and really show off the benefits of having a larger display, that's especially in a true widescreen aspect ratio.
This is from Steve in New Orleans. He says, hey.
Okay, let's move away from that. Okay. Oh, that's one other thing too. In order to get to the multitask icon here, you're going to press and hold the menu capacitive touch key, and then you can scroll through all your recent applications. And in order to close them, you simply swipe away each one. Okay. Now, in regards to the overall usability of the interface here, another positive that I think is one of the best features about this phone is when we go into the storage area. Now, normally this phone, it comes with a 4 gigabyte ROM, which about 2 gigabytes are taken up by the overall operating system, and you have about 2 gigabytes free of storage space for the internal memory. But a huge positive here, okay, if we go here, is you can actually have the SD card as a default storage place for app data and also other additional information that apps would need to store onto the phone's memory. And what that does, because I actually have a 64 gigabyte card here that I've inserted into my Fierce 2 here, that allows you to have much more space and leeway for the kinds of apps that you can download. You can actually download a lot of the bigger apps, like the bigger games like Modern Combat 4 and 5, the Asphalt series, Grand Theft Auto, and etc., thereby giving you a lot more flexibility compared to other phones in this price range, especially the L70 right here, which had even less internal memory to start with, and you couldn't store app data on the micro SD card unless you manually removed it, and you couldn't do that for all apps. And the only way to really install any of the bigger games is if you decided to root your device. The only negative with that, of course, is you void your warranty, so that's a bit of a bummer there with this device. So the fact that the Fierce 2 has that ability natively to install apps onto the SD card, especially the bigger apps, is a huge plus for this phone. Oh, and in case you're wondering how I was able to install a 64 gigabyte card onto the Fierce 2, the reason is I reformatted the 64 micro SD card slot into FAT32 file storage system, which is what this phone recognizes for external memory storage. Originally the 64 gigabyte card was an exFAT SD card storage, and for phones like this, it usually doesn't recognize it. But the good thing though is if you do install SD card with a file format that's unrecognized by the phone will actually give you the option to reformat the card into a file system the phone recognizes, and therefore you can actually use all that memory, which is why I have the 5943 gigabytes available. And likely you could do this same method and use a 128 gigabyte card with this. Haven't tried it personally, but I wouldn't be surprised if it actually works. Now, in terms of performance, the chipset that powers all the features and UI here for the Fierce 2 is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 200 processor. It's their entry-level processor, and it's a quad-core processor with 4 cores clocked up to 1.2 gigahertz, A7 cores. Essentially, the quad-core variant of the chipset that's in the L70. And the GPU is the Adreno 302. Now, because the phone has 4 cores as opposed to 2, the UI feels very, very fluid, very responsive. Apps open quickly. You don't have too much delay. You don't really have much delay. I mean, you only really notice it if, let's say, if you're coming from, one of those higher end devices. And even then, you get used to it rather quickly. Very smooth scrolling. And as you saw earlier, the web browsing and rendering is very quick as well. Another benefit to having a quad-core processor is the kind of performance you can get from the higher-end games, like Asphalt 8, for example, which we're loading up now. All right, let's do a race here to demonstrate. My particular favorite track here, Tokyo. Now, I have the game setting set on medium. It's fully capable of playing high, but I keep it on medium because the high settings has that weird filter, which kind of adds, I think, an over-stylized look to the game itself. But as you can see here, the water effects, lighting effects, all rendered smoothly. Okay, there's a demonstration right there. And as you can see, thanks to the option of setting app storage to the SD card, or you're fully capable of playing and installing all of the higher end games. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at, we're going to take a look at one more high end game, and that is Real Racing 3. Another high-end racing game, this one by EA. Alright, let's get started with the race here. Okay. Now this game is playing at high settings. Normally, the preset settings for a phone of this particular spec is low to medium, but you can actually set it for high using an app in the Google Play Store called Road Racing 3 Graphics, or you can modify your graphics yourself using your Fire browser. Pretty easy to do. Here we go. Change it to the, oops. Change it to interior shot. As you can see by the mirrors, definitely high graphics setting. Not doing so good. Okay, I think we're good with that. Okay, and there's a demonstration of the graphical capabilities of the Snapdragon 200 chipset. Now, in terms of battery life, as was shown earlier when I was giving you a tour of the overall phone itself, the phone is powered by a 2000 milliamp hour battery. Now, the battery life on this phone, despite the bigger screen size and the quad-core chipset, is actually pretty good. As a moderate to heavy user, I consider myself a bit of a power user because I like to game as well, retro gaming, namely, as well as consuming media and internet, is that with medium to heavy use, I've been able to actually get last an entire day of usage without needing to charge. Although with heavy usage, once I get towards the end of the day, I'm usually down to about 15%. But with moderate usage, you should easily be able to get through an entire day without worrying about the battery, needing to recharge the battery. Lighter usage, you can get a couple of days out of it. So, although I would have liked to see Alcatel put like a slightly bigger battery, something about 220 milliamp hours or a little bigger than that. But considering the price point, the battery life is still pretty good. Now, another benefit here is with the stock charger and the stock USB cable, the phone charges very, very quickly. Now, I haven't really tested that with other third-party chargers. It's likely it would be the same performance, but at least with the stock charger that comes with the Fierce 2, charging is pretty quick. In fact, I've gone from 15% to 40 or a little over 40% in just about a half an hour of charging, which is pretty good. So if you trying to charge your phone up and you don't have a lot of time, 20 minutes, half an hour, you can get a good decent amount of battery charge back onto your phone, which is good there. Okay, lastly, we'll talk about the call quality and the camera quality. Call quality for the Fierce 2 is excellent. callers' voices come through loud and clear. In fact, even clearer than the L70, which I thought had excellent call quality. They're distinct. They don't sound robotic at all. Very easily heard and legible. And on the same token of callers said my voice came through distinctly too, clear as well. No problems with hearing my voice on their end. In regards to the speakerphone quality, it's not quite as good as the overall call quality. Callers tended to sound a little muted, perhaps. You really needed to turn the volume up to really hear them, especially if you wanted to have the phone put at a distance. So that's definitely something to consider if you're a person who likes to use the speakerphone capability of the smartphone quite often. But overall, the call quality, call reception, excellent. In addition to great call quality, the network reception quality has been excellent, especially since this is a GSM phone now that's running on the T-Mobile nationwide network under the merger between Metro PCS and T-Mobile last year. Now, that brings up a good point. Because of the entry-level Snapdragon 200 processor, this phone does not have LTE enabled, unfortunately, which is a bit of a bummer, but it is HSPDA Plus enabled, which gives users download speeds up to 21 megabits per second. Now, in tests in my particular area, I was able to get download speeds consistently around 8 to 9 megabits down, 1 megabits up. Download speed's pretty good, upload speed's not so good. But if you're mainly just going to be surfing the net, watching YouTube videos, downloading apps, definitely a very good speed for that. Not quite as quick as LTE, of course, but still very good internet speeds nonetheless. Now that brings us to the quality of the cameras. Especially the 5 megapixel camera in the back and the VGA front-facing camera in the front. Now, the camera quality is actually pretty decent. In good light, especially outdoors, the picture quality is sharp. You don't have really a lot of noise. And the color reproduction, although perhaps slightly muted a bit washed out, you still have good details, especially when you're taking close-up shots and you have the camera holding particular still. An improvement over the L70 is that the low light and indoor performance color reproduction is pretty good. The colors are washed out, but they don't necessarily have that yellowish tint that you might see with the L70, for example. Another feature of this camera is that it has the ability to record up to 720p video. Not full HD, but you do get true HD video quality. One thing to note, though, for this camera, which is a bit of a negative, is the frame rate of the camcorder tends to get choppy when you're recording in low light situations. If the lighting is good, especially indoors or outdoors, you get very smooth video. In low light situations, if it's at night or you have a low light indoor situation, the video is going to be very choppy, which is a bit of a bummer, but definitely something to take a note of if you're a person who likes to take video with their cell phones. The quality of the front-facing camera, which is a 0.3 VGA camera and also can record video up to 480p, is pretty decent for a front-facing camera of this size. If you have good lighting available, you'll take pretty decent selfies. It does look grainy a bit, but the color reproduction is still pretty good. And same thing with the video. You know, if you want the best quality video that you can get here. You want to make sure you're in a good lighting situation. Now, unfortunately, for a few things that I didn't quite like about the phone, and these are things that are likely as a result of its more lower, more affordable price point. Compromises to keep the price at the current price bracket. Number one, the screen is not a Gorilla Glass quality screen. It's looks like it's a regular glass screen, so the glass is actually a little thicker than you would expect for other smartphones that use acrylic Corning glass. So definitely, you want to be careful when holding the phone. You want to be careful, especially not to drop it onto from height or onto harder surfaces. Another concern here is on the back with the camera. If you notice here, the camera module protrudes a little bit. If we hold the phone to the side, you can notice that. So what would worry me though is lying the phone onto rough surfaces, would the camera lens here be scratched? So definitely for concerns about the front quality of the glass here and also the protruding camera lens, that I would highly recommend getting a case, and that would basically solve both issues. The possibility of cracking the screen and also the possibility of scratching lens on the back here. Another little disappointment here is with the sound quality out of the headphone jack. Not that it's bad, it's just that I feel that sometimes when you're listening, you especially notice this when listening to some music, that the sound quality isn't quite as clear in the highs as I would like compared to, let's say, the L70. It's not bad. You really don't notice as much when you're watching movies or watching YouTube videos or playing games. But when listening to music, it becomes pretty noticeable. But definitely something to keep in mind if you're an avid music listener, when considering upgrading and, considering this as an option for a phone that you might want to get. Another thing to consider too is also just with the Alcatel brand itself. The original One Touch Fierce that came out last year, although a quad core phone and had specs that looked like it was a pretty decent, there were users that definitely had issues with buggy firmware, developing issues and problems with the phone. So that definitely lends some concern about the long-term reliability of this phone itself. I've had this phone for about 3 or 4 weeks. It's been my daily driver. Used it quite extensively, taking pictures, games, other other functions, and I haven't had any issues with it. Knock on wood. So it looks like hopefully Alcatel may have solved their firmware issues, perhaps, but that's something to definitely consider when looking at this brand, considering that Alcatel is not quite as well known a brand as perhaps you would say LG, Samsung, Sony, Motorola. It's more of along the lines of ZTE, although maybe not quite as well known as ZTE or Huawei, perhaps. So that's definitely something else to consider. But overall, coming from an L70, I feel like this phone is could be a good option for those looking for a bigger 5-inch screen on a budget. You don't want to spend a lot of money, but you also want to get the most. So with this phone, you get the quad-core processor, the 5-inch QHD display, quarter HD, that's lowercase q, not big Q. Pretty good battery life. The ability to install apps onto your SD card, so the memory expansion SD card becomes a big advantage for this phone compared to other phones. And also overall, the quality of the phone itself feels pretty good. So this could be a viable option for those considering upgrading to some of the newer phones on Metro PCS. And there you have it. That is the review of the Alcatel One Touch Fierce 2. If you have any questions or any concerns, feel free to comment down below, and I'll try and make sure to answer all of your questions. Thanks for watching.